away! Stay away!
What happened?
Got hit in the head by something.
In the Deadliest Catch, anything is possible, especially the most shocking accidents and injuries that will leave even the toughest men crushed. Boats can collide with each other, and weather aboard the boats can become colder than in the Bering Sea. Not even crew members, be they deckhands or captains, aboard the fishing vessels featured on the show, are safe from getting a broken hand, or a busted nose, or a twisted ankle. What are some of the worst injuries crews have suffered? Why does it keep happening? Join us as we explore the most painful incidents and fatal moments filmed on Deadliest Catch. The epic falls. The scene happens in the Saga. A storm nearly collapses the Saga, so the captain's choice is altered. Captain Jake is not unfamiliar with tide storms, but he always takes precautions to avoid paying a hefty price. He knows never to become too comfortable with them. The Saga crew are out fishing in the intense rain. Captain Jake informed his crew that this was the last string they had set. He said it had been soaking for 8 hours, and they were about to find out what they had caught. Captain Jake warned everyone that this was where things could get very dangerous. The team is still fishing despite the intense downpour, since they have a family reunion to get to. Captain Jake explained that this was the farthest northwest string they had set. He expressed hope that it might yield a catch of 200 to 300, even adding that he was praying for success. Once the crew pulled up their catch, it was clear that they had hit it big. Jake exclaimed in disbelief, stating he had never seen anything like that in his life. He emphasized the length of time it had been there by saying that it was only 8 hours. What a delightful reward. The sight of their enormous catch makes the crew members forget about the cold. If the crabs are the proper size, the pot is worth a lot of money. If not, at least they have crabs too. They had caught exactly 435, way more than Captain Jake had hoped. He says that 435 for 8 hours is unheard of. He has never seen fishing like that in his life. Screams of joy can be heard aboard the Saga.
Oh my God.
That scream can only mean that the crew has surpassed the previous record and that the catch is excellent. In the morning, the crew is relaxing after a tiring night, but they must now focus entirely on a new task that has emerged. A Saga crew member notices the rough waves that are pushing against the vessel and alerts Captain Jake. Jake decides all crew members need to get inside. Captain Jake admitted that he had failed to inform them about something crucial. He explained that in rough seas, their anchor loses its grip and won't hold the boat securely, which meant that they were in danger of toppling over. Right now, every move matters since the Saga could lose both its crew and its entirety. Captain Jake called out a warning to his crew, yelling for them to watch out and hold on tight. He explained the danger. If he didn't keep tension on the anchor cable, the winch could be ripped off and thrown overboard. He expressed frustration, stating that the entire fleet was likely watching their struggle and questioning their sanity for trying to retrieve the anchor in such bad weather. Captain Jake acknowledged that he had lost many anchors in the past, but his biggest concern was the safety of his crew. He promised to take responsibility for his own mistakes, but also hoped the crew would take responsibility for theirs. Finally, Captain Jake admitted he couldn't keep slack in the cable while they were trying to pull it up, and asked a specific crew member for help in determining which direction the cable was running. A lot depends on Jake's ability to negotiate the storm and get the jammed anchor out without panicking. The crew would definitely get an earful for being irresponsible after their fantastic capture, though. After this episode, Jake frantically shouted instructions to someone, likely a crew member, to not stand in front of the winch. He warned that the winch could rip itself free and crush the person. Following this outburst, Jake seemed confused, asking what had happened and why the winch wasn't pulling as expected. The deckhand is going overboard from where he is if the anchor snaps. Doesn't he know what the winch is? Jake doesn't stop telling his crew not to block the winch. The worst is avoided, and the anchor is effectively safely out of the water. In such weather, the next step is to sail to port, but Jake isn't too concerned about that. When a captain suddenly realizes that another boat is about to crash into his own, he becomes understandably worked up. An unbelievable collision. When two boats collide, everyone goes into panic mode.
Power that boat up and go hard to port!
The most aggravating dangers are those that you can see coming, but are powerless to stop. For example, the captain of the Wizard knows that all of his yelling is ineffective, but he nevertheless bellows. It's amazing how quickly he changes to damage control. Since they're at sea, he can't confront the other captain. Instead, getting his boat to port comes first. Road users ought to take this as a lesson rather than arguing and causing traffic. The bad encounter has infuriated the skipper. There will be severe consequences if the crew crosses him. The captain issued a series of commands to the crew. He ordered them to check the bow of the boat, then instructed them to power up and head straight ahead while turning sharply to port. Finally, he demanded full power ahead. Following these commands, the captain described feeling a definite shake in the boat. He expressed uncertainty about the cause, unsure how hard they had been hit, but ending with a hopeful note. After the collision, the captain of the Wizard spoke to the other captain over the intercom. Clearly frustrated, he accused the other captain of reckless maneuvering, questioning their thought process and if they had experienced engine failure. He demanded an explanation for why they cut in front of his vessel, which was traveling at a slow speed of 4.5 knots. The other captain responded defensively, explaining that he was attempting to reverse the boat, but the throttles malfunctioned and wouldn't respond. They expressed confusion about the situation. The captain of the Wizard conceded the point, telling the other captain to focus on checking his boat for damage, and wished him well. He concluded by stating he was also checking his boat for damage. Not even an apology? This was not the end of the talk, and the Wizard's captain will undoubtedly express his opinions at Port the Wizard. Captain, likely still shaken from the near collision, declared they had enough screaming to last a lifetime. A deckhand then stepped in, possibly to explain safety measures or calm the situation. They introduced a part of the ship called the collision bulkhead. The deckhand explained that in the event of a collision similar to what just occurred, this enclosed space would take on water instead of the rest of the vessel, potentially saving the ship from sinking. The captain would have probably picked up the radio again to do more screaming if there had been more damage. But after the preliminary assessment, the panic rapidly fades as the report is not as bad as feared. The captain described the close call they just had. He explained that their anchor snagged something underwater, causing it to veer off course and only graze another vessel. The captain emphasized the severity of the potential outcome. If they had hit the other boat head-on, with the stem, which is the front-pointed part of the ship, they could have sliced right through it. Although the second boat wasn't as fortunate and sustained some significant damage, who is the captain going to yell at? Certainly not those in the Wizard, and that's sufficient for them. A deckhand aboard the Saga almost got crushed by the winds in the Bering Sea. The boat is insanely cold. The Saga is colder than the Bering Sea due to the disaster. Bad weather at night bothers captains more than anything else. Jake must determine if it is worth jeopardizing his soldiers for a possible catch. Captain Jake shouted warnings to Jacob, the deckhand, to watch out repeatedly. Jacob, shaken but unharmed, responded that the impact of the wave was intense, but he was right. The sea is telling everyone, in case they didn't already know, why people should be cautious of it. A huge wave crashes on the deck, splashing cold seawater on all. The crew must be completely chilled from the spray. Captain Jake apologized, explaining the wave snuck up on him. Jacob elaborated on the incident. He said water surged through the deck boards and the coiler, machine that winds lines, lurched towards him. He instinctively crouched down as he was coiling his hook line. Jacob concluded by crediting divine protection for the coiler taking the brunt of the wave's impact. Jacob barely avoided being thrown overboard, and he would undoubtedly tell that tale to anyone who would listen for a very long time. Captain Jake expressed frustration at the situation. He emphasized that the wave came out of nowhere, requiring constant vigilance. He doubted they could safely haul their catch due to the worsening weather conditions. The captain highlighted the danger of these waves, their immense size, speed, 20 miles per hour, and sudden impact likened to a powerful punch. He concluded by deciding to call off the hauling operation, calling it a Bruce Lee. Certain that the crew wouldn't withstand another Bruce Lee strike from the water, Jake ends the evening. During a fishing expedition that is going rather well, tides turn, and a man goes overboard to quickly change the fortune aboard the Summer Bay. A man went overboard. It is interesting to see that Captain Wild Bill has a superhuman team on the Summer Bay. That's possibly the only reason they're preparing to fish for the night, rather than calling it quits. Captain Wild Bill announced they were fishing in deep waters and acknowledged the strong current. He encouraged his crew to hang on tight and revealed they needed to set their pots even deeper by 3 fathoms. Later, Captain Wild Bill mentioned that the weather had worsened significantly in the last 45 minutes. He acknowledged the limitations of luck, but expressed optimism upon seeing an empty spot. Nobody wants to work on the rail, but someone has to, and Spencer is chosen for the unnerving position. He reminded deckhand Spencer Davis to prioritize safety before sending him to the rail to begin hauling the first pot. Spencer reported difficulty getting the buoy secured due to the strong current, but remained determined to retrieve the pot, believing they would find the crab. Spencer shares his captain's boldness, believing that their combined strength and optimism will be sufficient to avert catastrophe. The crew erupted in cheers, celebrating their catch. Someone shouted, "Yeah, baby, that's what we want right here," likely referring to a significant haul, around 223 crabs. Another crew member expressed confidence, stating they knew the night would be a good night. Wild Bill has the entire sea to himself, while the other boats are gone for the night, and that's a lot. However, the celebration was short-lived. Another crew member, likely facing difficulty due to the strong current, exclaimed in frustration. They couldn't even manage to turn a piece of equipment, and a man went overboard. Is Bill unaware that he should never laugh in front of God? It's as if he's cursed the good fortune as the happiness fades and is replaced with pure fear for the man's safety. Captain Bill yells for his crew to get the fallen man out of the water. The deckhand has a very slim chance of surviving, given the choppy waters and poor visibility. Eventually, the crew was able to pull Spencer out of the water, and there was a huge relief to see that he was completely fine. Captain Wild Bill said it was the longest minute and a half of his life when Spencer was in the water, because he could not imagine losing anyone. In the next encounter, a deckhand gets a twisted ankle from being too excited about being aboard. A painful twisted ankle. A deckhand sustains severe injuries during a port return. Nick is so eager to get back to work that he trips and falls, seriously hurting himself and jeopardizing the Summer Bay's season. Sadly, Nick may not be participating in this season due to horrible scheduling, particularly since Wild Bill already has a large enough greenhorn population and needs as many season members as possible. A crew member called out to Captain Wild Bill using the ship's radio, asking if he was there and what the situation was. The crew member received confirmation that they were still hauling in pots. The crew member then revealed some bad news to Captain Wild Bill. They reported that deckhand Nick had twisted his ankle and expressed concern about enduring much longer in the season due to the harsh conditions. The least of Nick's current concerns is his team's disappointment due to his ankle injury, which can be extremely painful. Nick, the injured deckhand, groaned in pain, stating it was spreading up to his knee. Another crew member, likely assessing the situation, expressed uncertainty about the next steps. They mentioned potentially cutting Nick's boot off to treat the ankle properly with ice and planned to monitor the injury overnight. Finally, they suggested taking Nick to see a doctor, though it wasn't clear if this would happen immediately. They already have to carry him, and with the basic first aid on board the Summer Bay, the pain would only become worse by tomorrow. Is he really going to sea with that swollen ankle, which will just slow down the boat's operation? Nick grunted in pain, acknowledging a pretty big pop in his ankle. He requested a rest and possibly sit down for a moment, apologizing to his crewmates for the inconvenience. Another crew member offered reassurance, stating they would wrap the ankle and get Nick checked out in the morning, possibly with an X-ray. Captain Bill expressed his deep concern for Nick. He called Nick his heart and soul out there, highlighting his importance to the crew. The strange mishap is upsetting, but at least Nick now understands how important he is to the team captain. He might even use that to his advantage after his ankle heals to obtain a raise. One captain's impatience will cost another a dent as they collide while docked. The unpredictable crash. Captain Harley of the Southern Wind acknowledged the strong winds, but noted it appeared calmer in daylight compared to nighttime. He emphasized the need to get their pots back on board quickly. To achieve this, he explained he had to maneuver the boat to avoid being blown into Summer Bay. Captain Harley mentioned another vessel, named Summer Bay, agreeing to move out of the way by noon. However, he stressed the urgency of getting his boat situated so the crane could begin retrieving the pots as soon as possible. Captain Harley needs to pass his small neighbor before the Southern Wind can begin its journey. But first, There is another accident at Port Sours for the remainder of the day. Returning to the situation with Captain Harley, he is frustrated as he shouts instructions for his crew to move the boat and get a specific item positioned on the correct side of the dock. He urged them to hurry, emphasizing it was time to move the boat. Harley decides without even having Bill in his boat. Why is he so keen to fish when the other captains are happy with waiting out the rough weather? Does he have the coordinates for a once-in-a-lifetime catch? Nick, the deck boss on the Summer Bay, admitted his lack of experience in dealing with the current situation. He compared it to unpredictable events, using the metaphor of a refrigerator door unexpectedly flying off. He implied that such unforeseen occurrences are simply part of the job on the water. At this point, the Summer Bay skipper returns to his post. It appears that Harley is prepared to move to Summer Bay as well, though neither of them is aware that they might cross paths. Captain Harley of the Southern Wind issued several commands and expressed concern about another vessel's actions. First, he directed his crew to maneuver their boat quickly. Meanwhile, Wild Bill is questioning the actions of the Harley and expresses worry that they might collide. Wild Bill then considered potential solutions. He mentioned the possibility of needing a crash bag, a large inflatable safety device, and requested confirmation that one was available. Finally, due to his apprehension about the other captain's skill, Wild Bill requested a different crew member to take control of a specific station on his ship. He justified his request by explaining he had seen the other captain operate their vessel before and found it concerning. Captain Harley inquired about the distance between their boat and another vessel. The deckhand initially provided a distance of 200 feet, but then clarified that it was actually the length of the other vessel, and they were still behind it. The deckhand then provided revised closing distances, 50 feet, 30 feet, and finally 25 feet. Captain Harley's tone grew increasingly urgent as he received the distance updates. He transitioned from requesting information to issuing warnings and exclamations of concern. The situation culminated in a worried sigh. It turns out that Wild Bill's desire for crash bags wasn't an overreaction. Harley's maneuver was far from graceful. To be fair, Harley is accustomed to navigating at sea, where no boat is too close to him. Naturally, blaming the wind for the accident is Harley's way, especially since it can't stand up and defend itself. Bill disagrees that the collision was inevitable, and even though Harley's crew knows Harley's at fault, they can't say, so Bill, the captain of the Summer Bay, addressed the damage to his boat. He revealed a new mark or dent on the starboard stern and attributed it to Captain Harley bumping them with the southern wind. Bill acknowledged the inherent risks of rough seas and occasional accidents. However, he expressed frustration that such incidents can also occur while docked. He jokingly compared their situation to already being at sea and ready to fish. Bill then shifted to a more proactive tone. He called for his crew to load the pots and get back out to fish, emphasizing their determination to work even in stormy weather. He concluded with a rallying cry, telling his crew to get things moving. Perhaps Harley shouldn't venture outside in this weather if he struggles to maintain composure. Wild Bill already has a dent to worry about, but if he stays away from Harley, he might be able to avoid more. The crew of a fishing vessel suddenly abandoned the ship and needed to be rescued by the Coast Guard. The Ocean Challenger crew abandoned ship. It takes him just 1 minute to commit what could turn out to be a fatal error. Captain Keith provided some wisdom about operating a crane on a fishing vessel. He emphasized that the job goes beyond simply tying and untying knots. According to Captain Keith, a successful operation requires an understanding of the crane's position, the potential swinging motion of the pots as they are lifted, and a certain intuition or feel for the overall process. Keith begins the season with his customary call. As he goes about his daily business and reaps the rewards of being the ship's captain, Keith views this as just another ordinary day at sea. But how long can he keep a straight face? Keith spoke to his kids on a call. He told them to go for it if they wanted to dance, emphasizing they should be in the picture. He then asked about what was happening at home, mentioning something about a crab dance. This might have been a misunderstanding or a joke, as Keith thought his kids were saying they were abandoning the ship. It's apparent that Keith is an involved dad. However, a signal comes in, interrupting his father's time. This kind of signal indicates the start of an extraordinary and sad chain of events, and the fishermen will need to demonstrate their skill and fortitude to see it through. Keith will need to put his small family call on hold and get ready for whatever comes next. Ocean Challenger, a fishing vessel, has radioed to Mayday, the Coast Guard rescue team, during their launches from Cold Bay, Alaska, which is only 20 minutes away from the scene of the disaster. Ocean Challenger Mayday is still relaying information throughout the fleet. Sadly, Keith and his crew's fishing expedition didn't go as expected, and the Coast Guard had to come to their aid. This crew belongs to the group where everything breaks apart and requires a thorough search to find them all. The likelihood of saving the lives of the Ocean Challenger crew is greatly diminished unless the Coast Guard finds them in their life rafts, or at the very least, in their survival suits. They notice what appears to be a guy wearing a survival suit. Will the Coast Guard be able to find them all? A deckhand almost gets crushed as the crew brings in the pot. A crew gets crushed. As time is running out for the team, Captain Keith and his crew have decided to continue north for their next expedition and hope nothing goes wrong. However, if they persevere and work even harder, will they be able to return unscathed? Just as the team is taking in a pot, a deckhand gets caught between a hydraulic table and the pot, nearly crushing him. A fisherman getting involved in a nasty situation like this is never a good sight. And to make matters worse, the team is in the process of making a big catch. Roger, a crew member, may be receiving professional assistance right away. Captain Keith expressed concern about a crew member's well-being. He shouted questions to determine the situation. His tone intensified with religious exclamations before asking again for confirmation about the crew member's condition. Keith then issued clear instructions to the other deckhands. He wanted the injured crew member to stay exactly where he was, emphasizing they shouldn't be moved. The deckhands asked the injured crew member if he is all right. Captain Keith, however, remained cautious. He insisted the crew leave the injured person exactly where they were and not move them until he could assess the situation. He repeated these instructions for emphasis. The deckhand stands but leans on something. Though he was nearly crushed by the hydraulic table a few seconds ago, it's a comfort that he can now stand and carry on with his work unharmed. Captain Keith directed his attention to a crew member named Roger, likely to assess a potential injury. He instructed Roger to make eye contact and then ask specific questions about the location of the pain. Captain Keith then inquired about any unusual sensations. Roger expressed feeling heavy. Finally, Captain Keith wanted to ensure Roger could move smoothly. He instructed him to avoid jerky movements. This time, the team is dealing with a really unfortunate injury, and with fewer people, there is less time for recuperation, so they will have to put in more effort while worrying about Roger. One crew member suddenly gets his finger caught in machinery, and that means one less deckhand for Cornelia Marie. A serious finger injury. The second week of autumn brings harsh conditions for the Summer Bay and Saga crews struggling to find king crab. While the pressure is on to catch their quota, the captains face the challenge of keeping their crews safe and motivated in this unforgiving environment. Deckhand Taylor Jensen's finger gets caught in the coiler, yelling for help. This unexpected injury comes at a critical time, leaving the crew short-handed as a storm rapidly intensifies. The limited visibility due to the storm could further complicate their ability to manage the situation and ensure everyone's safety. Josh, the captain of the Cornelia Marie, tells Taylor to come up to him. Taylor Jensen's injury is a setback for the crew. Captain Josh, having witnessed similar situations before, understands the impact. An injured crew member creates a burden as the remaining crew needs to cover extra duties, especially during a dangerous storm like the one brewing in the Arctic. Taylor's mangled finger, caught in the coiler, requires medical attention. However, with the storm intensifying, treatment options are limited. Captain Casey. Cornelia Marie's other captain faces a challenge, ensuring Taylor receives proper care while prioritizing crew safety in these harsh conditions. Captain Casey assesses Taylor's injury and determines they need to remove some damaged skin to properly dress the wound. He instructs someone to fetch medical supplies, including scissors, and clarifies the type needed. The initial inspection reveals a more serious injury than anticipated. Captain Casey recognizes the severity, stating and acknowledging it will likely sideline Taylor for some time. While expressing sympathy for Taylor Man, Captain Josh also acknowledges Taylor's positive attitude. He mentions Taylor's usual let's do it approach and assures others that Taylor dislikes the reputation of being injury-prone. What are your thoughts on some of the most unfortunate occurrences on Deadliest Catch? Do not forget to share your opinions in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this one.